but unfortunately it's also too easy. The first one is obvious. It's called email, and I did that too. Most of the when people use symbols for email, they use envelopes that are closed, letters that are closed. When I put a letter into a post box, the postman and the people at the post office can't easily read or routinely read all the letters. Email is like a postcard. Everything that is written in an unencrypted email can be read by everybody, every computer and every person who is involved in delivering that email. And if you look at how the internet is working, there is a lot of companies. In Germany, and I'm sending an email to somebody, to you in Brazil, I bet you there's 10 or more companies involved of that email. And people at all those companies encrypted email, it is just like a postcard. We do talk about encryption, and part of PIXELATED is encryption, as I will explain later. But I briefly wanted to tell you that still, with encryption, the problem is not completely solved. This is the header of an encrypted email, and I know you in the back you can definitely not read it, but you can see a lot of interesting things in here. You can see the date. On the 26th of February, this email was sent. And I actually censored the original recipient and senders. So it was sent from azul@blue.net. So I know who sent the email, even though everything is encrypted. He's sending it to Eric. And he's saying, meeting next week in Brazil. Sorry, in Berlin. And I know the date, so I know when they meet. But I can also see the user agent, the software he's using to send the email, including the operating system. So I want to attack that person. And it was in one of the keynotes yesterday, I think Andre was talking about how weak the endpoints are, that it's so hard to secure the endpoints, the computers. So here I'm giving away the information and saying, if I'm on Linux and I'm using Thunderbird, look for vulnerabilities in that software. Don't bother figuring out how to break Windows. I'm on Linux anyway. There are some projects, some very early stages taken to move those headers into the encrypted part. That brings a whole set of other problems. It makes it very difficult on mobile phones to actually display an overview because you have to decrypt the entire message. But people are working on it. But today, when you encrypt your email, be mindful that the sender, the recipient, and the subject line at a minimum are still people who are not technical are really surprised about this. They say, I thought it was encrypted. I can't believe that you techies, you technologists, sent the subject in clear text. You told me it's encrypted. We are violating the expectations. I just want to make sure that you understand what the right expectations are. The body does everything we want. The body is completely encrypted. And as Edward Snowden has said, that is one of the few things that is really playing in our favor. The encryption we are using for sending email is considered to be unbroken and safe from the NSA. The actual encryption. Your computer, mine. So one thing that makes it is the fact that the information is transmitted in plain text, that it's not encrypted. But there's a second, and some people argue, even worse problem in today's email landscape, making it so easy, and that is that of concentration. Email was designed as a completely decentralized system. Email servers, and I did this. I mean, 15 years ago when I lived in England and DSL became widely available, I ran an email server in my home. I've given up on it since because it became email servers. And because of spam and botnets, the ISPs don't like you today to run email servers in your homes. But in either case, people, it is now not a question to run an email. Should I go to hot and email usage on the service side. The lines are easy to hold up because market put all their on the services that people are using. They tried really hard, they put together the scene of the numbers. This is a rough guess, and it's a rough ballpark, as we say. With that said, on a global level, like the biggest five email service providers are responsible for about 40% of all accounts. This is really hard to say. I'm not talking about people or accounts. Many people have accounts with, say, both Hotmail and Gmail. So you can get all accounts by going to 5 companies globally. What do you think happens when you look at it on the country level? Is it getting better or worse? It's getting much worse. Because in most countries, there are companies that only operate or only popular in that country. So by adding a few country-specific companies, you can further increase the level. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers for Brazil. I do have the numbers for Germany. You have to go to 8 companies and get about 90% of all the email accounts. So if you're a state actor, don't break the encryption. Just go to 9 companies and tell them, give me the data. In the United States, it seems to be much worse than that. It looks like you probably only have to go to 4 companies to get 90% of all the email accounts. So there's a huge amount of centralization. The companies and get the data. And if you followed the story around Vladar Levinson and the email service that got shut down, his service was perfect. The data was on the hard drives he was operating. He couldn't read. Nobody could read them. What happened? The FBI went to them and said, hey man, change your server software, capture the password, and decrypt all the data. It doesn't always help us. The centralization creates these big targets and a small number of targets that become very, very attackable and make the overall system. The important part, making mass surveillance really expensive. With the PIXELATED project, which is an open source project that I'm going to talk about in detail, we are not aiming at building tools that are for the whistleblowers, for the people who need real protection, for the people who have very strong adversaries against them. If you are being targeted by a government agency, you probably have to carry 2 or 3 laptops. You have to buy your laptop in a shop, never connect it to the internet, never open a web browser on it. If you are facing that, you have to make lifestyle changes that most of us, including myself, are not willing or able to make. However, think away of my talk with the insurance example that might change. But we can be the people, like all that secure communication, that encrypted communication, is much, much more expensive for the government agencies and other parties to intercept the email. Now, if there's, and I don't know what the number is, but it's very, very low. It is definitely less than 1% of all the emails are encrypted. So it's quite easy and cheap to go there. If you only have to go to 4 companies to do this, what you want to do with a project like PIXELATED, and the LEAP project plays a big part in it, and Micah, who's sitting here, is going to talk after me about the LEAP project, so I'm not saying we're the only ones, but what we are trying to do is we're trying to make mass surveillance really expensive. If it becomes expensive, you can't do it on a mass scale. The analogy I always use is, and it's probably similar to you, my home has a lock on it, so I don't want people to get into my door. And that lock is probably okay, so the to my home every day and check out. It's just too expensive. What I'm trying not to do is I'm not building a door of the police or the military. That doesn't mean that I'm a completely open door. Hey, do you want to join me under the shower? You know what I mean? Privacy is not an on or off. Privacy is like a dial. You can have no privacy and you can have very, very strong privacy. But most of us probably want to be somewhere in the middle. And that's what we want to do with PIXELATED, to make it more expensive. For the other side, cheap for us, obviously. So the two main goals for PIXELATED to get more people to use encrypted email. And what we really mean here, we mean seriously more people. At the moment, the only people that use encrypted email are the people who know that they should ask for that. If I think about people like my uncle, who is in his 60s, he doesn't even know he needs to ask for encrypted email. He probably assumes the email he sends is protected, is in an envelope. If I tell him that all the email he sends to me about his family and so on, that the people at the telecom company can read, he's going to be very disappointed. He doesn't even know he needs to ask for this. So we're trying to explore with PIXELATED is to give encrypted email to people who don't even know that they need it. And I explain why. And the second goal is we want to get more organizations to host their own email again. So we want to get away from a world where you have 5 servers for 90%. We want to have 10,000 email servers per country, because that again makes it more expensive. If now a state actor wants to get access to the emails on the server, they have to go to 10,000 companies. They have to fill out 10,000 forms. They have to send people physically to 10,000 places. It's much, much harder. But because at the moment it's not easy to host email, we're doing it. The way we intend to do it is we're saying, that's our hypothesis. We're saying, if users need to do anything at all to encrypt their email, most of them won't do it. The moment you tell them, download Thunderbird, download the Enigmail plugin, exchange keys, ring somebody and read out the fingerprint, you've lost them. They're not going to do it. So we're trying to explore, is it possible, and under what conditions, can you make a lot of people send encrypted email and they don't have to do anything special? That brings me to the principles behind the project. We aim for mass adoption. As I said before, it's not about giving tools to people who like whistleblowers. This is for all of you, for people like my uncle who don't even know they need encryption. As a company behind it, initially, I'll come to that in a second, but also as the project, we do not want to provide a service. We just want to provide the software. There will not be your name at pixelated.org email addresses. We're not creating the next Hotmail. PIXELATED is a server-side product that we hope system administrators will install for their users. If you will, it is a B2B product, not a business-to-consumer product. If people want to skin it, by all means do it. We don't want to host it, we want to provide the software. It can't be said often enough, you probably have heard it 100 times now. If you're doing security, if you're doing privacy, it has to be open source. There's just not even any point in starting if you're not doing open source software. So obviously, PIXELATED is open source software. And the last and important thing is, writing an email client is very, very difficult. The standards that have been set Google and Microsoft are extremely high. The usability is very good. Features that you only notice when you stop using them and going back to an old one. If some of you are used to something like Gmail, technical, install something like RoundQ, an older open source web front end, and you will curse non-stop because they're just not that good. It's super difficult. So a project that aims to do email for end users needs to be a large project, needs to be a project that has many contributors in many countries. Contributors that change the language. At the moment, Pixel is done only, the user interface is in English. We need to have the user interface in 50 languages for this to be a mass adoption game. And that means it can't be a project that is done by 10 people. It needs to be a community project. And we really, really try very hard to make it easy for people outside the core team to contribute. And we hope that over the long term, the whole project will run as a community-driven project. I want to say 2 words. As you know, that I work for ThoughtWorks, a company in IT, and there's Ola sitting over there who's going to speak also. ThoughtWorks started this project. We're not doing this to make money. In fact, we're spending money on it. And yes, we are doing it because we think it is the right thing. There's no plan to make any money later. But we also are not that big, so we really need to seed the development. We want to give a starting point, but we really try to build a community that builds Pixelated. So at the moment, there's a team. We have 4 people in Hamburg, in Germany, and 7 people in Brazil, 6 in Porto Alegre, and 1 in Recife, who are working on it full-time. But we want to get more and more contributions, and over the year, or years, it is a long game, we are hoping that the majority of changes and additions will not come from the original team, but from the wider community. Because we know how hard it is, and also how much time and money it does cost to build something like that. What we do want to do in the next few months is, we want to validate our hypothesis that people will actually start writing encrypted email if they don't have to do anything special. How many of you in the audience are technical, like developers or? Okay, so I'll make this section a little bit shorter then. So this is a technical overview, but I'll highlight the key features of what we're doing. On the left-hand side, on the user's computer, the people who are using Pixelated, they don't have to install anything. They open the web browser like they do with Gmail, like they do with Hotmail or Yahoo. They can just go to their email. We think it's absolutely crucial for the mass adoption. The moment you have to install software, you have lost 95% of the people. This has implications, and I'm happy to discuss them all. It is also important, obviously, that it has a good modern experience. So we looked at existing open source solutions, and I promise you it was not invented here. We looked at many of them, and they were still using email inboxes and mailboxes, and you had to sort your email. There's not the experience that will get us mass adoption. We really believe that you have to have an experience with this endless inbox, or just archive it and have really fast search and tagging. And we have 1 full-time user experience designer on the project because we know the importance. We're always running it past other people. We're listening to the feedback. We want to make things easy. And as I said, no software is needed on the computer of the person who uses. Brief glimpse, that's what it looks today. We started this project last June. If you go to the website, you can play with it. You can actually log in. There's 3 demo accounts. You can't play the 3rd one. You can log in. You can send yourself email. Try it out. It is relatively early stages, but it is working software already. If you have any feedback, let us know. I'll give you the details later. Twitter, email, IRC. Any feedback, we are super welcome because we want to make it easy to use. Very quickly, all the orange bits in the middle is the Pix. We have a multi-user dispatcher, so obviously the server handles multiple users. If you're doing this in an organization, you have people or you have 1,000 people that work there, so there needs to be some software that allows you to log in and maintain the data for multiple users. So that's what we have in the dispatcher software. The dispatcher software uses a tool called Docker that some of you may know. It's actually quite popular at the moment for isolation and so on, to run the web application for the server. So the JavaScript application talks to a server component that is there for you, and the dispatcher is managing them. A nice feature of that is our organization that we work for are present in 10 countries. But I probably want to go to mail.thodos.com. Oh, this is Eric. I'll dispatch you to your user agent that is running in Germany. Or they go, oh, Chiba, you are in Brazil, so I sent you to a user agent that is running in. So the idea is, with a setup like this, you can also do decentralization at the sub-organization level. You can have decentralization further down as well. It is built on the Leap platform that Micah will tell you everything about. I mean, I've said it before, we're standing on the shoulder of giants. They have done really, really cool stuff. Leap basically transforms a Debian Linux installation into a hardened installation that is secure and has email services running on it. And it does so by running scripts. So that's the other thing. If we want to make it easy for organizations, individuals, and companies to run email, they can't spend days setting up a mail server. So we have created, or are in the scripts to install all that bit in the middle, in the orange bit, with a single shell script. You just run this, you enter a couple of configuration parameters like the domain name and so on. You run the script later, because the script takes a while. You have an email server running for you, and hopefully running stable without too much interaction, like making sure the log files don't spill over. We are really working on this not only for the end user, but also for the system to run the mail service. Important to mention, if there are any doubts, so as I said, it's open source. We talked long and hard about the license. As a company, we attach the open source license because it's one of the easiest to incorporate and work. We made a big exception. We looked at the GPL. That was better already. For something like this, we want to make sure it stays. So GPL didn't go far enough. Because the GPL said you have to hand over the source code when you are distributing the software. This one, you could download our source code, project, install it on your server, make software. They also have to make the changes public. I want you to all understand the critical statement. Somebody wants to know, they will download the software, they will make changes, they will run it and not tell anyone. We can't control it. Even violations of the GPL are rarely followed up in court. Never mind the AGPL. What to do? Remain open source. Discussed and did. There are no CLAs. So many open source projects require the contributors to sign a license agreement saying, you, the contributor, give the copyright to the project, which means the project can make changes later on. We've decided against them. And that creates what is called, in legal terms, IP entanglement, intellectual property entanglement. After a while, if we have accepted 100 contributions from individual people, no license, because we'd have to ask 100 people, you first have to find them. They might not have done it under the real name, an alias. You have to find them, you all make them sign it. It's impossible. So we deliberately do this. We're not asking for a contributor license agreement to create this IP entanglement to make sure the software can never be relicensed under a different license. As the mail through phone to the internet to other email providers. As I said it, we use encryption. It uses the PGP email standard that has been around for 20 years. It's widely used. Some of you may know and use it already. Thunderbird and Enigmail are very, very popular tools to do so, but you can also do the command line and MUT and all sorts of other tools. It's been around, works really well, there's nothing wrong with it. And it allows us, of course, PIXELATED to not stay in a walled garden. We didn't want to create where you have to have PIXELATED to send encrypted emails. You can use PIXELATED to send encrypted emails to everybody else who uses encrypted email. That means obviously the simple layer transfer protocol. We support transport layers, which standard in Germany. The providers made a big splash last year, including television advertising at the prime time. There were people walking around the streets looking over people's shoulders on their phones. Do you want people to read your email? So it was really on prime time television. But the only thing the providers did is they encrypted the transfers. And they called it email made in Germany. It's actually a good step. It's better than not going far enough. Anything that is brings us forward, try to use the standard. Similarly, the big problem with the public key of the person you're sending the email that you're sending the email to. It's been torturous having good solutions, but some decent solutions, and we are supporting them. We have HKS protocol and the SKS key servers, and they are supported right out of the box. If in PIXELATED you're sending an email to somebody who has the key on a public server, not a PIXELATED user, a normal PGP user will find the key and encrypt the email. This is really aimed at maximum interoperability. I'm going to open questions, but there's probably one big question in all of the people who have ever done anything like this. So I'm going to answer that proactively. And you probably piece this together on the server. So a lot of people who talk, clients and encryption are saying you have to keep control of keys. The problem is the moment you keep control of your keys on your laptop, to make sure your laptop is completely secure, and you normally have to install software. If you have to install software, 95% of the people. So while we agree, if you are a whistleblower, please secure your laptop and put the keys on your laptop. If you're like my uncle, keys, you don't even know what an encryption key is. You don't care. You want your email to be encrypted. And what we are changing is you only have to trust the operator of your email account. You don't have to trust everybody else. The alternative is send and therefore trust 10 or 20 companies. I don't know who your email provider is, but if I send you an unencrypted email that has the keys on a single server, you can choose a company, an email provider who you trust. And after that, you don't have to trust anybody else because the email is encrypted. In a situation in a company, it's even more obvious for the same people that operate the software on this laptop. If I don't trust the server, I have no reason to trust this laptop because it comes from the same people. It's the case for many companies, and it's often the case for organizations too. Anybody who issues hardware, for the majority of users, they don't wipe the hardware clean and install the operating system anew. And also, if you're really paranoid and you don't trust them, you have lost already because they can have changed the so-called firmware software in the laptop that is very, very hard or impossible to change. So the moment you're accepting hardware from an organization, there's fundamentally no difference whether the key is on the laptop or on the server. Furthermore, we're talking about mass adoption. In the kingdom, for example, it is illegal for companies to not have access to their employees' email. So if somebody leaves the company, maybe of misconduct, maybe they got a better offer or they wanted to earn money and went somewhere else. The company has to have access to the email. That means if he doesn't have the key, but so again, I just think about when you talk from the rules that we often talk about today, mostly talk about encrypted email for activists, for people who are targeted, for whistleblowers. Different rules. What we are trying with PIXELATED is to see what actually are the rules. You talk about mass adoption, when you just a lot of people to send encrypted email without knowing that they actually need to do that. And in that scenario, it doesn't make much of a difference. Goes to the lead guys here. You see these three orange boxes. Interface access for multiple people. On one, but all of these use network protocols and different. You can install in a relative place, same as lava bits. If you get to the hardware, access to the data, you have now. And the attack vector, of course, is operate change. The user agent run, and what you can person agent. It's a simple Python web application. That we're talking about is there's now, as you know, the Raspberry Pi and a couple of other small devices. The idea can be to actually run the PIXELATED that you are attaching to your DSL code. All the encode under your control, that complete this interface actually change a little bit away from everybody to a slightly friendly setup. That's what we call it is on setup. And that is all I have, other than obviously being here to answer all your questions. Any questions? So the question is, what is the adoption of this tool in the market? The adoption is 0 at the moment, because the tool is just being written. So we have started with PIXELATED last June. We are now in a stage, I would say, if you're a software developer, and if you download it, you should be able to make changes, submit pull requests, run it locally within half an hour. You should also, if you have some system administration skills, and you happen to have access to a Debian server, or you can create a virtual one, to actually run PIXELATED on your computer. There are many little issues. I mean, I didn't go into the technical details. The platform uses Couch, a modern NoSQL database, to store the emails encrypted yet more. There are some performance issues there. So if you try to run today a node for 1,000 people, it probably won't work. So this is very much in progress, but we are at a stage where there's enough now that you can see it, and you can start building it, you can start experimenting. And that's what we've done this in Brazil several times. We've created these hack days. So days where a part of the PIXELATED team invites people all over the place, and most of the team is based in Porto Alegre on the campus there, to come in together and we get people to.
Where is the main development?
Yes. Where is on GitHub? So you can see all the development on GitHub. The team that is funded by ThoughtWorks has 4 people in Hamburg and 7 people in Brazil. So in we have system at Brazil, we have developers, our project manager, Renata is in Brazil, and we also have a user experience designer here in Brazil. Let me put it, so this is in 13 countries. It is not theory haven't seen, but we felt, for reasons you may understand, it was a much better option to do this in Brazil and in Germany.
First of all, thank you so much for the great talk. I especially agree with your idea of making surveillance expensive. So I would like to know if you believe that we can use something just like hash to avoid spam. If we could make some sort of tool to make, a technical tool which could make surveillance even more expensive. The sense of not only decentralizing the system just like the service, but making it distributed. With the idea of 51% attack, if you want to break the system by 2030, it will cost $1 billion. Do you believe that we can make some sort of thing just like blockchain-based with massive markets like that?
So the question is, can we make it even more expensive, going further with decentralization to also change something that is based on the blockchain, but is also used by Bitcoin? This has been an attempt. The problem is, it hasn't been successful. You need, luckily, with email, where there's a lot of different companies that are trying to, or that are providing email services, and you need to interoperate. There's no way I think that through. I mean, we saw. SMTP is a terrible standard. IMAP is not particularly good. Email is kind of blurry. Do we want to send messages, or do we just? Isn't that more or less the same thing? And you know the whole thing when you're trying to say plan a party or a trip, you were sending emails back and forth between 5 people, and you really shit at them. They don't see the beginning of the conversation, except everybody's history, every email. It's not a great protocol. And the company, Google, obviously, tried to work a new protocol into this land called Google Wave. I don't know how many of you have remember this or have seen it. It was really quite good. But even a company with the monopoly power and, in this context, near infinite resources, had no chance to make a dent. They were not able at all to get anywhere to any form of adoption because it wasn't properly interoperable. So I think it could be interesting, and I'm sure there's great improvements. But I just can't see a path from today's reality into that better future. It needs to be evolutionary and interoperable. Yes. But the good thing is, and I'm not sure whether Micah is going to talk about it, but it uses different protocols. So the communication between the Leap platform and the pixelated user agent is a protocol called Soledad. And that is already beginning to look into protocol evolution. Is there something we can do? But you need to do both at the same time, and that means it's going to be as bad as the worst of the two. Any other questions?
Sorry, I don't have much technical knowledge, so I'm going to make some simple questions just to clear things up. So you said probably less than 1% of email today is encrypted, but in some other part of your presentation you said that if you want like a massive surveillance, you only have to go to like 5 big email companies and ask them the information. So I think we're talking about 2 different kinds of encryption. maybe I don't know. I'm a bit confused. You know, if it's not encrypted, you wouldn't even have to ask the company because it's all open. Or are you talking about two layers of encryption or something like that?
So I can actually clarify that. When the email is unencrypted, you don't have to go to the companies. But it is still slightly more painful because there's all these wires on the internet, and it is more expensive to intercept all the email. And I mean, companies like Google and Microsoft, they're also trying to use transport layer security, which means that even if the email itself is unencrypted, the transport from one server to the other server is encrypted. That is break. There's tricks, and somebody with the power of the NSA can likely break this, and they can get at the data. But it's expensive. The argument I was making is so much cheaper to then just go to Google and say, you know what, we're getting bored with intercepting all those cables and trying to get to your TLS, and just give us the data anyway. So it's about money. It is not about two layers of encryption. It is purely about cost effectiveness.
That clearly now. The other one is like about when you're talking about the private keys. So you said they were kept in a server. So what server is this? I didn't understand where administrators of the local companies, local organizations. Okay. And is that the same as the user agent? Is that like the admin? I didn't. Okay.
So in the default case, all that orange bit is installed on a single server. And that server, you can do this if you are technical. You can buy a server somewhere. You can run it on your server at home. But we assume that in most cases for Pixelated, this will be the organization you work for, the company you work for, or a small mail provider. Maybe the internet service provider that you have, somebody who can install it.
So, ideally, the difference between the mass adoption user and the activist setup user is that on the activist setup, you have like a local installation on his own laptop, like you work as an email service provider. So, is the right
So no, the difference between the standard organization setup and the activist setup is not that they take everything in the orange box on their own computer. What they do is they don't need the dispatcher because they don't need to log in. It's their thing. They put the mail user agent on their computer, but the lead platform still runs on a server somewhere. Because the lead platform doesn't see anything that is unencrypted. The lead platform is encrypted data. You could, in theory, run the lead platform on your computer. It's generally not a good idea. For many reasons. We can talk about later. Okay, thank you. Oh. So the question was, is this really mostly for companies? Does it make sense if I install a server for myself, then everybody else who I communicate with can't use encryption? So we hope that on a social level, yes, I mean, companies and organizations, we think, great, use that. Some people who are already using encrypted email, you can communicate with, because if they use Enigmail, Thunderbird, standard tools, you can communicate. But what we're hoping is that on the social level, we can use existing trust relationships. So if, say, there's a family, an extended family, like to get like the family and uncles and aunts and grandparents and kids and cousins and so on, a larger group maybe. If only one person is technical enough, you trust that person in general. So that person could install an installation of Pixelated and provide the accounts for everybody else. So that means that as that group, you can definitely communicate in an encrypted way. And if more people do it, then of course in between areas you can also have encrypted. Same thing with sports, like say the football team. You give people email addresses for the football team. Why does everybody have to have a Gmail address? You are a member of the football team, maybe you are. If it's very easy, and there's one person in the team, set up that people again.
I'm sorry if it's an annoying question, but allows to have a explanation of what really is an open source.
This is not a trick question, right? Okay, so the obvious answer is no. I shouldn't have said this. The idea is that this software will handle your emails and is making a promise to you that it is encrypting the email and is not allowing access to anybody. You do not have the source readable version of the software. Nobody can verify that. If you only get the version that gets executed on the machine, as if you don't need this anymore. You don't know exactly what it is doing. And therefore, you would really, really have to trust somebody. In some ways, I'm actually doing this. So I have lots of websites, and I don't want to reuse my passwords, and I want to use complex passwords. Digits, numbers, letters. So I'm using a password manager software that actually is, and I'm trusting the company who makes it, that they actually properly encrypt it and not sending the keys back to their company. So you could argue that if you trust the company enough, it's also. But I think for something as crucial as email and something that sees wide adoption, you want to have the ability of some people. It doesn't mean that you as the user have to look at it, but the assumption is that other people out there have a look at the code, and if they find something, they'll go to the press and then say, hey, this pixelated thing, look, in line 59 in this file, there's something really evil happening. So you really want this verifiability.
So, explain. So, what are you calling like human readable code? You know, this is not a binary. It's like, you know,
source code in what programming language, and majority of what is running in language, and they get translated. And if you want to see it, it is on GitHub. The address is there, and so if you go to pixelatedproject.org, GitHub repository, and all the source code is there. And it has been, for the first 2 months, we played on our own a little bit just to see whether that made any sense at all, whether we could do it. But from, was it last August, right? Late August last year, everything the team has been doing, every single change to the source code has been made on GitHub, and everybody can see how the team is working, when they are working, who is working when. All of this information, all the changes are there for everybody to see.
One little technical question. Is only within the pixelated network, or is it going to communicate with Gmail, for instance? Because when you communicate with pixelated network, it will be decrypted, and all the history of the using SMTP will be shown in when you send back to other people. It will be decrypted, and you have not secured your email. How do you do with that?
So PIXELATED is definitely not a walled garden. It's not a solution that only works with itself. That's why we have all the interoperability. So the moment you go out from the lead platform to the target email provider, it uses SMTP and TLS. SMTP it has to use because that's what everybody does, and transport layer security, the encryption of the transport when it can. So that's a good step in the right direction. If it ends up on a Gmail platform, it doesn't. You can still use PGP encryption. Still, this works. It's just TODOS.com. Type it PIXELATED, and you have never communicated with me before. PIXELATED will use the HKP, the protocol, to find whether there is a key for eric@thoughtworks.com on one of the SKS servers. It then will find the key. PIXELATED will encrypt the email, send it over SMTP, and in my Google inbox, it will arrive as a PGP email. Then I go to the webmail interface, and I can't read it, because the Google webmail interface can't do encryption. But if I connect, I'm an Apple user, if I use the Mail app on the Mac with the GPG tool, I can just read the email was completely encrypted, and Google never had, on their servers, never had a clear text version. The decryption happens on my laptop. Even on the hard drive, the email remains encrypted. It's a bit redundant because the hard drive is also encrypted, but still, so you have to the maximum extent possible. But yeah, if people don't have a PG, so the question is, do we expect some threats from what is that? To be honest, this is something that we have to. We don't think there will be any direct threats. I mean, ThoughtWorks structure is there's ThoughtWorks Incorporated, which is US, and then ThoughtWorks Brazil and ThoughtWorks Germany are owned by the US company. So that's one of the reasons why we are so careful with the open source license and the IP entanglement. So we can't be forced to change the license. The work is completely done in Germany and Brazil. So again, the question is how much the governments can do. The governments in both countries are relatively friendly towards the whole, I mean, in comparison to other countries, relatively friendly to this. Whether there's anything any government can do is really hard to say. I mean, a company like ThoughtWorks with 3,000 people relies on many, many different things. I mean, people like us, we have no idea. But we don't think there's a major threat, and we definitely have, in contrast to some activists have said that that it is not acceptable for anybody who works on the PIXELATED project to go to jail because of that. So our lawyers are looking into this and making sure that we're complying with all the crypto regulations, but that is the line we're taking. This is not an activist thing, this is really open source software. Okay, thank you very much.
Pessoal que estiver mais dúvida, a gente tem um espaço ali na sala do Cabaço de conferência às 4h30, com o pessoal que será daqui do Brasil. E depois é uma situação mais
pessoas do Centro Cultural do Livramento lá embaixo, para voltar aí a vídeo das músicas. Valeu!